So I'm super excited to have with me Candice Imwalle today. Candice is a longtime industry friend. We've worked in the med device industry together as similar companies for years, I am super excited to include her on my channel, Thoughtful Gardener and Garden Thoughtfully on YouTube, since she has recently written 2 books regarding children and healthy eating. So thank you so much for being with me, Candice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invite. Good to spend time with you again. It's been a while.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about, what you need to do to really get kids to eat healthy. Obviously, we're such a society that convenience is important to us, but I wonder if, you found that there are tips and tricks that you could share with the audience that would allow them to also maybe incorporate more healthy choices into their children's diets.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to start incorporating that into the dialogue at a very young age, which is why I wrote the children's books, because children are very influenced by books that they read. And a lot of the children's books have life lessons, say please and thank you, different life lessons, but there were no children's books that taught the life lesson of eating healthy. So number one, you definitely have to start early. And, the way that I did it with my children and what I've encouraged other people to do is, there's a few things you have to consider. First and foremost, you have to lead by example. So at your home, you need to make sure, again, at a very young age, that you incorporate fruits and vegetables and protein and start getting children accustomed to the fact that they should have a protein, a carb, fruits and vegetables in their meal. So first, I think that's what's really, really important. The second thing is you kind of have to make it fun, because anyone that has children or grandchildren knows the minute you try to force the child to do something, they're going to not want to do it. So you have to kind of guide them into it by having options for them to choose. So again, you're giving them the power to choose what they're going to eat, but the choices are healthy choices.
Right.
You definitely have to make it fun. Another way to make it fun is not just giving them choices and they make the decision, but also incorporating them into cooking. What I noticed is anytime my children helped cook something, it made them more excited to eat it. And of course, we would choose recipes. They would want to cook something really unhealthy, and I would guide them to make it healthy. There are some recipes that you can edit the ingredients to make it a similar recipe, except with healthier ingredients. So that's the second thing. And then the last is education. And, this year, if anything, what we've learned is that mortality is a reality. We've had so many people die, and even young children are aware of how many people that are dying. And so I think it's really important to teach children the why of eating healthy. So, you say you want to eat healthy so you have a strong body, so that you don't get sick when you get, even as a child, you can get sick if you're not eating healthy food, because your immune system is compromised. And so it's really teaching them the why, and even getting them to understand, the 80-20 rule is kind of what I follow. Because again, going back to making it fun, you can't just hammer them to eat protein, vegetables. That's all you can eat. You have to give them a treat also, but teach them moderation, right? So you say, you need to have healthy stuff. So if you eat 4 healthy things, you can eat 1 cookie or 1 piece of pie. So it's also important to make sure they're learning moderation, because if you restrict them too heavily, they're just going to go crazy and eat a whole bag of cookies when they finally get the cookies in front of them. So those are some, I guess, overall tips that I've incorporated with my children and of course, other people that I talk to help them. It's also really important when you go out to dinner, don't let them order from the kids menu. It's so frustrating when I go to any restaurant, even restaurants that carry healthy food. Some of them will just have chicken fingers, hot dogs, mac and cheese, and that's their only option. I mean, luckily there's some restaurants that do have healthy menus for children, but many of them don't. So that's kind of another best practice, and get them to order off the grown-up menu. And sometimes they kind of enjoy that a little bit more because they're getting a privilege that typically the adults get.
Absolutely. I think those are some great tips because I think, anytime anybody's involved, whether it's the meal planning or, the prep or getting involved in the recipes, I can say for myself, if I've done the prep, it's way easier to eat healthy if there are choices that are already ready to go. I have an adult child that comes in and is like starved because he's been working all day. So my thing is, if he gives me a call before he's headed home, then I can have some choices out for him that aren't so dreadful, but I think, your point's well taken about letting them make choices and then they're involved in the process. They're probably more likely to comply, right?
Exactly.
So the start is always the hardest. Like we're here almost in a new year. And I think one of the challenges for people is like, I want to start a healthy habit. I want to start doing something good for myself and my family. What's the number one thing you think people could potentially do that would help them be successful in getting their kids to eat healthier?
Well, I think meal planning is really helpful because, again, a lot of, and this goes for adults too, I'm the same way. If I haven't prepared what is going to be eaten in the day, you're more likely to eat something that's quick and easy and maybe not as healthy.
True.
So a lot of it is, thinking ahead of what you want to have for the meal. And I always ask, my kids are teenagers now, and I always ask them what they want for dinner. And, I try to cook something I know they like so that when I incorporate the healthiness in the meal, that they're embracing it. And in a lot of cases, they're going to ask for something that's not that healthy. So again, it's important that you add healthy things to it. So my kids really like pasta, and, pasta is not that bad if it's for children. Obviously for adults, if we're trying to stay healthy, pasta is not the best thing, but I'll make sure they also have protein and a vegetable or a salad. My kids really like salad. They're not really big vegetable fans, but that's what's awesome about salad. You can put, a bunch of different things in it. But really it's about planning. And again, setting the expectation with your children. This year, if you haven't been eating healthy, or your children haven't been eating healthy, 2021 is a perfect reset year, I think, for a lot of people. 2020 had a lot of unhealthy news that we heard over and over again. And so you could maybe say, hey, let's make 2021 the year that we all get really healthy, and let's do this as a family. And let's hold each other accountable to be healthy. My kids were even at the point that they'd read labels when we're in the grocery store, because a lot of foods have more sugars than others, and my children would be fighting over who was more healthy. Like, oh, you're going to drink that juice? That is way too much sugar. You should drink this one. So, maybe making a competition with your children, because they're always competing anyway. So just feed into that can help as well.
I love that idea, is to sort of gamify it a little bit and be like, I'm eating healthier than you. But certainly, our food is our medicine, right? So as a gardener, I can tell you that, eating your own homegrown food is so important. And my niece, who's 8, is a little gardener and loves to grow her own food. And I think that, like you're saying, if you can get them interested in, counting the calories and maybe preparing the salad, what's going to go in the salad, having them participate, I think really encourages them. But you said something really important, is that modeling of the behavior. And, my mom, we used to call, the non-sugar queen. Unless it was your birthday or holiday, there was no sugar in my house, with the exception of Kool-Aid, which you could hear the sugar as you ground the spoon in the bottom of the pitcher, because we were allowed to make that. And then, the occasional sugary kids cereal. But as a rule, I'm super grateful for it as an adult now, because I don't crave sodas and I don't crave really sugary things. So, how important is modeling as an adult and being a good example, for your kids? How important is it to get, to the adult thinking about healthy eating?
Yeah, I think that's crucial. They're going to model your behavior, and if you're not eating healthy or you're not offering them healthy choices, how are they going to ever be healthy? It's like anything we do as parents. They copy what we do, and they have to see that you're really making an effort at being healthy. And it's not just eating healthy, it's exercising, it's doing all the other things that prevent diseases that could impact you long term, diseases that you and I have seen in our careers. I'm working in the cardiology space. I mean, a lot of patients, they have horrible disease mostly because of diet and lack of exercise, and it's really sad because it was controllable for a lot of people. And so teaching early on, modeling the behavior early on, I think is really important.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's important to recognize is it's not the big things, it's the little things, the little changes that you can make. Like one of the things we know from a clinical research side right now is that eating dark chocolate actually seems to, based on the research, be a preventative for COVID-19. Yay, dark chocolate. So maybe you switch from milk chocolate to dark chocolate. That's not a huge switch. And so I'm like, well, that's why I haven't gotten it yet. I eat a lot of dark chocolate every day. And I also, I drink a lot of tea, and green tea has also shown to impart some benefits. So, do you find that talking about, disease and helping our children understand that, the food really is a preventative for them having to take medicines, or in my case as a child, all you had to tell me is I was going to get a shot and I would do anything to avoid that, right? So, have you found that that's helping them to understand that, if I eat better, then I can be a better athlete, or I can be a, more, I can be taller. I mean, that was one of the things that my mom used to tell me is, you need to eat your vegetables so you can get taller. Didn't exactly work out, by the way. I'm only 5'2". So
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And that ties to teaching them the why. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, this year, they've heard a lot about people dying. And you kind of can use that as an opportunity to explain to them why some people are dying. When you talk about comorbidities, a lot of those comorbidities are caused by a poor diet and lack of exercise. And so their entire life, I've given them the why of why you eat healthy. And even going as far as like, if we know of a relative that had a heart attack or something like that, you know how Uncle Joe had that heart attack? Well, Uncle Joe's been eating really unhealthy his whole life, and that's why he had the heart attack. And luckily he didn't die, but he still had to deal with a heart attack. And so it's tying it to things they know or things they already hear. And athletics also tie into it. Both my children are athletes, and letting them know you're going to be a better athlete if you're eating like this, if you're working out in addition to playing the sport and going to the practices, like doing extra, lifting weights. And it's giving them that carrot, no pun intended, of why they're going to do this. Because again, as parents, if we're just pushing them to do something, but they don't understand what's in it for them, if they do it, it's going to be hard to get them to do it. And I notice, I have friends that just say, you have to eat your vegetables. It's like, well, explain to them why. Like, tell them why the vegetables are better than the mac and cheese that they really want to eat. And then also explain to them, you can still have a little mac and cheese, but you've got to balance it with all these healthy things.
Right.
I mentioned the sugary cereal. So I will let my kids get sugary cereal, but they know that it's only for the 20%. They know that it's not going to be a meal. They can only have it after they've had a healthy meal.
Right.
So again, you can't restrict them too severely. You have to kind of lead them to why they're doing this. And then eventually it gets to the point where when they do eat something really bad, like my son, if he eats pizza, he's like, oh, I feel awful, I had pizza. They also know the difference between how you should feel when you eat something healthy and how you'll feel when you don't eat something healthy. So it's also differentiating that.
Right.
So.
No, and that's true. I think we all have been there, especially like, on holidays, we have a tendency to overeat. And so, if you've ever taken the turkey nap, so to speak, after you've had that big turkey meal, I think you bring up a great point is, sometimes it's a lot of fun to go on a sugar binge, but look how hard you crash and how terrible you feel after the fact. And certainly in our convenient society, we're seeing more and more children, the number one disease is obesity. And
Mm-hmm.
this generation is predicted to live less years than their than their parents, which is really terrifying.
It
So,
is.
so I love that you're on the front end of getting them to like embrace the why, because I think it's really important to give them some reasoning other than I just told you to do it. They're a lot more likely to be compliant.
Absolutely.
So, do you encourage, and how much meal prep do you find is involved with, with your family? Like, do you guys pick a day of the week, or how does that work typically?
It's not that I guess specific. I think it's more we're kind of loose about it because they've been taught ever since they were really young what they can and can't eat. And my son now is driving, and so he'll even go to the grocery store. So we always buy pretty much the same thing. We always buy chicken breast and salmon and ground grass-fed beef, and we buy all the same stuff on a regular basis because our meals don't vary that much. We'll always have chicken, we'll always have some kind of beef, we'll do salmon. The one thing that might vary or this is the seasoning. But our meal prep is just kind of incorporated into our lives because it's been a habit that we've been doing for so long. And when my son goes to the grocery store, he knows what he needs to buy. Like he's not going and buying frozen pizza, boxed mac and cheese. He's buying all the healthy whole foods that, they've been eating their whole lives. So,
Right.
and that's why it's really important to start them young, because then it just becomes a habit, and it's a lot easier as a parent when it's just like teaching them to make their bed as soon as they, when they're young, they're really eager to learn stuff. They have this natural curiosity. And so you teach them to make their bed when they're like 2 or 3 because they are excited to do it. And the next thing you know, they continue to make it even when they're teenagers. Although sometimes you have to remind them as teenagers to kind of digress back to an infant. Like, don't forget, you're supposed to make your bed every day, but, same thing. It's
Yeah.
teaching the habit, and also setting the expectation of what they should be eating.
Sure. And some of the people that are going to be listening to this are definitely grandparents too. And I think it's important that they reinforce what's going on at home so that we're not, yes, my grandmother used to have Pepsis because we weren't allowed to have that at home and that was a treat. but she also had all the other healthy stuff too. So like you're saying, that moderation I think is important. But some families certainly now with COVID, as we were speaking earlier, either can't go out, maybe they're immune compromised, and maybe they need to have things delivered to them. Have you used any meal prep services that have made your life easier, or do any of your clients currently use meal prep that might have those healthy choices, but they're delivered to them?
Yeah, I personally haven't used any meal prep services because we already know what we need to do. I think meal prep services, and I think every city has at least 1 or 2, and they'll deliver to your home. And I know there's a few of them where you can actually let them know, I want a meal, I'm trying to lose weight, so I want a meal that's low glycemic. I want a meal that's high in protein, low in sugar and carbs. And you can dictate exactly what you want. So if you're kind of new to being healthy, or you haven't really been eating healthy and you want to eat more healthy, you can start off with this meal prep service. But then once you start seeing what they're putting in the meals, then you can eventually branch off on your own and then just have the groceries delivered. Because it's a lot less expensive if you have the groceries delivered and
Right.
you make it yourself. But it's a good, I guess, gateway into eating healthy if you have somebody doing it for you. And then you just know what's in all the recipes. And then eventually you can just make it yourself. You can also, there's a lot of personal trainers at gyms that not only will get you on a workout plan or an exercise regimen, but they'll also teach you about diet. Like I know the gym I go to, all the trainers will also talk about diet, because if you're going to try to be healthy in 2021, it's exercising. I realize some states have the gyms closed, so it's more exercising outside, hiking, biking, or exercising at home if you can't leave your house. There's so many apps now you can exercise at home. There's also virtual trainers that can teach you about what you should be eating as well. So there's so many people out there that you can engage virtually or in person, whichever you prefer, to get information about exercise exercise as well as what to eat. If you're not sure, what's good and what's not, what you should be eating.
Yeah,
so,
and I
meal prep services.
absolutely recommend a coach if you're not yourself used to eating healthy and want to engage someone. I think that's spot on advice to engage a trainer or a nutritionist, or and there are all kinds of people that you can find on YouTube and on the web who do these types of training and help. But it's also good to have an accountability partner, right? And whether that's a family member or a friend who's making sure and checking on you and keeping you on track, or that you have to report into, because it's really tough if you are starting a new goal or a new habit to stick to it. And, there was a book I read this year that I would say is in my top 3 called Atomic Habits. And one of the things that I love that he talks about is that if you've never worked out, like, work out for 1 minute. It sounds completely insane, but do 1 push-up. And he's like, if you're going to drive all the way to the gym and work out for 1 minute, you've already put on your clothes, you've gotten in the car, you've driven there. You'll be like, why am I just doing this for 1 minute? I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. So the point is that the habit is really the important piece of that. And it sounds like your family has really embraced that because they know that these are the things we eat. But what would you say for teenagers? Because teenagers are tough, right? I mean, I hear my friends talk about, how much they eat all those high carb things, pizza and macaroni and cheese, all the, sweets and stuff, and they have the metabolism to do it, but Mr. Metabolism goes away at some point and you can't do that anymore. So I'm just wondering, do you have a favorite snack that your kids typically gravitate to when they come in the afternoon, or maybe when they're headed out to practice?
Yeah, well, going back to what you said about the teenagers eating really unhealthy food, again, the teenagers typically aren't buying food, right?
True.
It's the parents buying the food. And so what I hear from a lot of parents is, oh, my kids will only eat pizza. They'll only eat chicken fingers. And I remind them that one of the instincts that everybody is born with is the instinct to keep themselves alive. And they will not let themselves starve to death. So if your child is refusing to eat a healthy meal that you've cooked, and this is any age, by the way, like I've had friends that, oh, my 3-year-old won't eat healthy food, so I feed them chicken fingers every night. I said, your 3-year-old, after they miss 2 meals, they'll eat whatever you put in front of them, and they're not going to starve to death if they miss a couple of meals. And by the way, you won't have to make multiple meals, and you're teaching your child you eat what the rest of the family eats. And
right.
So a lot of it is not caving, not getting them what they'll only eat, because eventually they will eat healthy if you won't buy what they will only eat.
Very true.
And a lot of it is, definitely having the right foods there. As far as your snack question, my son's really into granola. He gets, a lot of the healthy granola bars. And if you've done the work to teach them what's healthy and not, then you're going to get a lot more compliance, and they're going to make the choice on their own. My daughter, on the other hand, is not quite as diligent as my son. So she likes goldfish. So I get the little bags and I say, you can have 1 little bag. You can't, I don't get her the big thing because she'll eat a lot more of it. So, and that's part of the 80-20. It's that I say, okay, well, that will be your dessert. And she's like, okay. And so then she realizes she's got to eat, chicken and salad and to offset the bad food. And a lot of it's awareness. Like, I mean, once you get your kids to the point that they know they're eating something bad, and you've already taught them the why of not always eating everything bad, they'll eventually, my kids, the way they negotiate with me to buy something with sugar is they'll say, Mom, I'll eat broccoli, and I'll eat some carrots, and I'll eat chicken, and then I'll eat that. And it's like, okay, fine. That's like their negotiating tool now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to, like you said, give them a little bit of flexibility, such that if there are some snacks that they just absolutely love, but that, like you said, in moderation, I think those snack packs are a great idea. So
yeah, and you had mentioned earlier too, like if people need advice or ways to help their kids, they can also contact me. I mean, I'd be happy to help. So if anyone has questions or want some guidance on what they can do, I mean, I'm somebody they can reach out to as well.
That'd be great. So certainly that was one thing that I know we had talked about. Your books are available. Where can they get them? And then also too, if they do want to reach out to you and have questions about healthy eating, where would you recommend they go?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. My books are both on Amazon. If they go to my website, which is CandiceImwalle.com, then that has also a link to order my books. So they can reach me. I could put my information in the chat, or I don't know if you can put it in the chat,
I'll do that right now.
like the email address and as well as my cell phone number, how to get in touch with me, and I'd be, happy to talk to anybody that has some questions.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, we appreciate that. And can you tell them as well, what age ranges your books are targeted towards?
Yeah, so my children actually helped me write the books because they wanted to make sure I used words that weren't too big so children would understand them. My book, Howard the Seagull Flies to the Stars and the Moon, for comprehension, that's probably as young as like 2 or 3. It's a really fun story. Takes place at a beach, and it's a seagull and a mouse and their friends, and it's all about eating something healthy so they can fly higher. So the concepts are very easy. So you could do as young as 2 or 3 if you're reading it to them, and then probably up to about 6 or 7 if they're going to start reading themselves. And then my other book, Sir Morgan and the Kingdom of Horrible Food, which my son came up with that title. I don't know where he heard of Sir Morgan or whatever, but that was his title. That's a little bit older concept. So if you're reading to them, they'd probably have to be about 4 or 5 to understand the concepts. But then as far as reading comprehension or reading it themselves, probably up to like 10 or 11. So my range is about 3 to 11. And those are really the influential years. Once they get to 12 or 13, it's a lot more challenging to change their habits, although I'll argue with the year we just had, you probably have a lot of whys to explain to them to get them to change habits. But yeah, those are the years that if you can get them of that mindset in those years, you're good. I mean, they're probably not going to go back to eating nothing but junk food.
Absolutely. Well, I've put your information in the chat and I'll post it as well on Facebook. So if people want to order the books, they can do that. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And what I will do is reach out to one of our attendees here on Zoom and we will share a copy of the books with them. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And it was so nice to see you, Candice. And thanks for sharing all the helpful information on healthy eating.
You as well. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Have a good afternoon.